The town of Hague on the shore of Lake George is still under a state of emergency this afternoon.
Trees have so much ice on them.
The community was cut off completely for a time by downed trees on the roads.
Could be another 1 to 2 days before power is back to everyone. Hughes said snowmobiles were used to make contact with people in more remote areas.
With some families facing a third night without electricity.
Most northern U.S. residents regard winter as a burden to escape. For the majority, their preferences run to beaches and sunny climates. They find their escape in places like Florida, the Caribbean, or along Mexico's sunny shores. A minority, however, embrace winter in one way or another. Some flock to alpine ski resorts. These folks join throngs of like-minded people standing in line for lifts to carry them up the mountain for their glorious rush back down. Others choose snowmobiles, transporting them to snowfields, where they fly along groomed trails and through the woods from one fueling stop to another. A tiny minority choose another route. We bind skinny little skis to our boots to break through deep snow, climb up hills, and glide back down. We're among those who sweat outdoors all winter long. I've often wondered, what drives us to participate in such an activity, and what would it take to make a perfect winter? This pictorial essay follows our travels through the winter of 2008. Always a quest for the perfect winter, maybe our journey holds some answers to those questions. We began the season as usual with our New Year's trip to Craftsbury. In the heart of Vermont's unspoiled Northeast Kingdom, Craftsbury Outdoor Center has some of the finest cross-country skiing in New England. This year they boasted a newly renovated ski shop to complement their first-class grooming equipment. And with 3 served meals in the cafeteria, there's lots of time for skiing. This year's forecast promised excellent snow conditions, and on arrival day we got in a few miles just to check things out. On Saturday morning, the whole gang took to the trails. The groomers had been busy, and the few inches of fresh snow made for delightful skiing and scenery. That afternoon, a couple of local school buses showed up, attesting to the popularity of cross-country skiing in the North Country. We skied into the setting sun and finally gave it up for a shower, dinner, and some relaxation in the lounge. There were even a few poker players that evening. The next morning, trip leader Dave Leroy led many of us to Highland Lodge. The idea was to ski the 12 miles back to the ski center. It's a mostly downhill trip to the village and then back uphill to the center. As club members age, however, we find that more and more of us choose to get a ride back up from the village in a van.
Here comes Sandy down the big hill, down below the sugars. She's doing really well. All right, Sandra May. Sandy is gonna do it. Yes, indeedy, Bob.
There are some long, steep downhills. Happily, they weren't icy this year, and although we saw some falls, there were no injuries. Of course, it wouldn't be Craftsbury without the New Year's Eve bonfire, where the locals and tourists alike drink champagne and throw Christmas trees on the fire. Our next trip took us to the Allegro Guest House in Port Lyden, New York, just east of Tug Hill. Tug Hill claims the deepest snowfall totals east of the Rocky Mountains. At the Allegro House, we enjoy the relaxed atmosphere, but we do have to cook our own dinners. This year, the area had been through a rainy period, and although there was some snow on the ground, there wasn't as much as we'd hoped for. Using several websites, we identified a trail in the tiny town of Piseco that was in an area that had some deep snow. We made the 30-mile drive and found the trailhead to the 6-mile loop at a tiny seasonal airport. The snow was frozen hard and there was lots of tree litter, but there was plenty of the white stuff. We had a pretty good time working our way through the woods. We even saw a few trees that had been chewed on by beavers. And we had a few water hazard challenges because the rain-swollen creeks had melted surrounding snow and had yet to refreeze. All in all, it was a pretty good day. The next morning we headed to one of our all-time favorite trails, Carpenter Road. The trailhead we usually use was melted out, but we tried another entrance and that one had plenty of snow. The previously tracked but icy trails were coated with a tiny bit of fresh snow, and we got in some pretty good skiing. Tim Musser even took a shot at a special challenge. We had time on our last morning to stop at Bria's Jackson Hill Trails. There we looked over the elegant new warming hut before heading out for a loop on the trails. We'd gotten several inches of fresh snow overnight and it was very pretty. But the new snow was sticky and some of us turned around. Our next trip took us to North Creek, New York, and the rental place called Hudson House, which logically sits right along the shore of the Hudson River. North Creek is home to Garnet Hill Lodge and its wonderful cross-country ski center. We've often attempted to ski the 11-mile backcountry trail that leads from Route 8 to 13th Lake near the ski center. But we've always been frustrated by a lack of snow, downed trees, or some other problem. This year was different, with plenty of snow and no recent windstorms, so we set out to ski the trail. It was a beautiful day and conditions were great. We climbed the rocky trail up the 500-foot shoulder of 11th Mountain and skied the thrilling descent into the valley below. Then we followed the course of the lovely Scanandaigua River for a while. There were delays, of course, like the time we took to examine the myriad of moose tracks and moose scat they deposited along the trail. But there were more serious delays, too, as we began to run into lots of unbridged water crossings, some of which were pretty challenging. We'd planned to swap car keys with others from the club who were skiing the trail in the other direction. Wisely, they decided to turn around when the going got tough. We didn't get off the trail until 5 o'clock that evening, and we're very happy for a big dinner and a relaxing evening back at the house. Most of us agreed that we'd had enough adventure for the weekend, and we opted to spend the day in or around the Garnet Hill Ski Center. We spent the morning doing nice loops along the center's impeccably groomed trails. Back at the ski center for lunch, we formed small groups for the run down to the bottom of the trail system and the bus ride back up the hill. The afternoon started out great until Frank lost a fight with a trailside tree. Oops. Sandy and I decided to stay in snow country and do some skiing on our own on our way to the Pulaski trip. We drove the width of Adirondack Park and finally landed at Pioneer Lodge, an old favorite of the club. There had been lots of snow since our earlier trip to this area, so we decided to try the Bria trails at Jackson Hill again. They were beautifully groomed and in wonderful shape. The next morning, with several more inches of fresh snow, we headed for the Centennial Ski Trails near Branningham Lake. The trails were in great shape, but hadn't been skied recently, so we had our work cut out for us. Several inches of snow fell while we were out, but it was a beautiful day, and we thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. On our final day, we headed to another set of Bria trails, these at Egypt Road, and, sort of, on our way to Pulaski. Again, the trails were in wonderful shape, with lots of snow and beautiful grooming. We took the opportunity to explore some of the trails in the system that we've never tried before. What can you say about Pulaski, New York in the 1880 house? This destination ranks second only to Craftsbury in popularity. Actually, I sometimes wonder why, considering the number of stairs you have to climb to the second and third floor bedrooms. This inn's main business is with fishermen who flock to the area for the excellent salmon and steelhead fishing. The inn's kitchen turns out wonderful breakfasts, soups, and dinners for our enjoyment. And we all enjoy evenings spent talking, snacking, playing games, and may I say, drinking, in the huge, richly decorated Victorian living room. There are lots of places to ski in this area, and the Tourathon trails in Winona State Forest are among our favorites. That's where the early arrivals headed for a warm-up ski on Friday afternoon. The trails hadn't yet been groomed, and there was lots of fresh snow. So the skiing was slow, but the scenery was wonderful. Snow clung to the trees and fell down in mini blizzards from time to time. This might have been one of the all-time best Friday afternoon skis. With a large group and so many possibilities, we often break up into smaller groups on this trip. Some of us opted to try the trails at Chateauguay State Forest on Saturday. This is a small area, and the trails are easy. However, they had not yet been broken following recent snows. We didn't let that deter us, though, and we broke about half the trails in the forest. We even took time to explore the trails on the east side of Beecherville Road. On our way out, we followed the tracks of some snowshoers who bushwhacked their way in from the parking lot. It turns out that hills that are suitable for snowshoes can be a bit of a challenge on skis. Another group went to Osceola Tug Hill Cross Country Ski Center that day. This is a very nice touring center with trails ranging from easy to others that can challenge even experienced skiers. The one-man show owner-operator of the place also has an excellent assortment of skis and boots for sale at very competitive prices. It's become a favorite place for club members to pick up new gear. Again, the conditions were excellent, and almost everyone had a good time.
I'm smiling, but it might not last.
Right on the shores of Lake Ontario is a small state park called Selkirk Shores. There are some pleasant trails on the property, and it has the bonus of a different kind of view for cross-country skiers. Anyway, some of our number have made the park a regular part of their Pulaski experience. By Sunday, the groomers had visited most of the trails in Winona State Forest in preparation for the Tug Hill Tour-a-thon races to be held the following weekend. Many of us returned there to spend a full day and to explore some of the more distant and challenging trails. Breaking up into small groups, we crossed tracks with others in the club on several occasions. There is lots of variety in this extensive trail system, more than any of us could ever hope to cover in one day. One of those trails is my personal favorite, an ungroomed one called Bill's Belly. I don't have a clue how the trail got that name, but I make a point to haul my belly along it every year. Something interesting always seems to happen on this trail. I especially like the little challenges posed by some of the short, steep descents and climbs and the unbridged stream crossings.
Here comes Tim, he's doing it. All right, here comes Peter. All right, nicely done.
Well done, Peter.
Right on.
You got more speed than I did, Peter.
Very nice.
This is that interesting problem where you can't get both tips up now. Cindy's finally got it now.
Yep.
And she's going to make the big leap here over the water hazard. She might have a wet tail there on her skis. Whoop, now if she didn't before, she does now.
On our final day, several of us elected to revisit the trails at Chateauguay. Most of us were on skis, and we broke the last of the trails that had not been skied over the weekend. Others decided that it was a good day to break out the snowshoes. They went to Chateauguay too, but on the other side of Beecherville Road. It was a beautiful day. In fact, a beautiful, enjoyable weekend too. Chalk off another wonderful experience near the shores of Lake Ontario. Waterville Valley, New Hampshire was a new destination for our club this year, and we did it big, offering 5- and 7-day options for members. It's a neat little village where you can walk most places, and it sits right in the middle of an excellent cross-country ski center. We stayed at the Black Bear Lodge, a suites hotel facility in the middle of this end-of-the-road vacation destination. We early arrivals explored the extensive ski center on our first day there. It was awesome, with a wide variety of trails ranging from easy stuff that ran up and down the valley to very challenging trails that scaled the side of the mountain that used to serve as the valley's downhill area. 5 miles back toward the interstate are the Smarts Brook backcountry trails. These are varied trails that can be skied as a loop. The main one parallels a lovely stream with cascades and beautiful ice formations. The rest of our group arrived Sunday evening, and we were ready to hit the Waterville Valley Trail System on Monday morning. All agreed that there is something here for everyone, and we all had a great day. On the north side of the valley is the backcountry trailhead that leads to the Greeley Ponds. Everyone decided to do that trail, an in-and-out affair that started out as a truck trail. It soon turned into a true trail, however, and it became increasingly pretty as we slowly climbed toward the ponds. Happily, all the stream crossings were bridged on this trail. The ponds themselves, rimmed with high peaks, were quiet and serenely beautiful. The trip back, of course, was mostly downhill, and we had some long, easy glides that were very enjoyable. Our last day found us back on the Waterville Valley Trail System, exploring pieces we'd not yet covered. By any measure, Waterville Valley is a great place. It's a resort, to be sure, but a laid-back one that somehow avoids too much hustle and bustle, and that offers days of great skiing variety. Sandy and I decided to spend an extra day and try the trails at the Franconia Inn. The inn is an elegant place that offers luxurious accommodations and fine dining. The ski trails are narrow but groomed occasionally by snowmobile. We took a route that wound through the wooded mountain to the south of the inn. The trails are quite pleasant, but they really only have enough for about a day's skiing. The trip to Inlet, New York is another perennial favorite. The area is very popular with snowmobilers, but offers excellent cross-country skiing opportunities. We rent 3 condos at Rocky Point Lodge on the shores of Fourth Lake, and, each night, gather in one condo for hors d'oeuvres and another condo for dinner. Just 2 miles away, the town of Inlet maintains a network of ski trails in Fern Park. On the evening of our arrival, a few of us decided to spend a couple of hours getting a feel for the snow conditions. Conditions were excellent. The next morning, most of us elected to return to Fern Park and ski through the park and on to the backcountry trails that lead, eventually, to South Shore Road. The day started out great, with excellent snow conditions and trails that were well maintained. Things got a bit dicey, however, when Mary Liz Tadero's ski boots became unglued and, eventually, had to be taped up for a return trip to the parking lot and a shopping trip to purchase replacement gear. The rest of the group continued toward their destination. However, the trail had not been maintained for some time and the going got pretty challenging. Finally, as they neared their destination, they encountered snowshoe-groomed trail sections that had been traveled by other club members earlier in the afternoon. Most of the group agreed that that was enough of the crazy stuff and agreed to do the nearby Cascade Lake Trail the next day. This is a lovely, fairly level trail that encircles a pretty lake. Conditions again were excellent, with lots of powdery snow blanketing the trees, but not so much that trail breaking was difficult. The trail crosses the lake's outlet and passes through both deciduous and evergreen forest, with an occasional view of the lake itself. Of course, the nature of skiing is that falls can happen anywhere, even along the most benign trails. Finally, the trail crosses the lake's inlet, in this case passing a nice waterfall. Of course, it's a frozen waterfall at this time of year, and it's actually easy to miss when you're skiing. We always make it a point to stop there, of course, to take pictures and have a bit to eat. This year it was also the site of a downright embarrassing romantic display. In spite of that, everyone said they had a lovely day. A couple of people even had enough energy left to ski around nearby Moss Lake, also a pretty trail. A few of us opted to return to Fern Park again. This time we skied off the backside of the park's peak to some ungroomed trails on the other side. It was really tough going for a while, but the scenery was beautiful. From Inlet, we headed far north to the village of Val David in Canada's Laurentian Mountains, about an hour north of Montreal. Our lodgings were in Auberge du Lac Paquin. This is a lovely old, knotty pine-paneled lodge overlooking a pretty lake. Early arrivals took the opportunity to ski on the frozen lake. Conditions were pretty good and they had a nice time. Ludovic, our host, was running the place by himself since his cook had recently quit. Matt London helped out in the kitchen for a few days until Ludovic managed to hire a replacement. Turns out, though, that Ludovic was an experienced chef, and the meals were great. We'd planned to ski a system of trails in Parc Dufresne, operated by the village of Val David in cooperation with neighboring Valmarin. They and other nearby trail systems were closed, though, because icy conditions from recent rain and freezing temperatures made it unsafe to ski and impossible to groom. While looking around the village, however, we discovered that the level, linear trail that runs through the village was groomed and skiable, and free. A few of us took that option. The tracks were icy, but since the trail was level, it was still easy to ski and ski fast. We had a nice day, first heading north to the village and then to the south. As the day went by, the sun softened the snow enough for a huge groomer to grind up the ice and make the skiing even easier. Near the end of our southbound excursion, we passed a large lake and paralleled the outlet river past a series of pretty rapids. We even stopped for fancy coffees at a trailside cafe. There was most of a foot of sleet and snow that night, making it impossible to drive in the morning. A few of our number decided to brave the weather and head back to the lake below the lodge. In the afternoon, we returned to Parc Dufresne. The trails were not yet groomed, but they were just fine to ski. And, as with most Canadian ski trails, they were very well signed, so we had no problem finding our way around. Also, as is common here, they had trailside warming huts. There were some challenging trails, and we all had a good workout. Of course, there's no better way to finish a day skiing than with an hour or so with friends, sipping a latte or a cup of steaming hot chocolate. Just to the north of Val David is the charming town of Saint-Agathe. And, on the edge of town, among several small lakes, is Parc de Campeur. Boasting a huge new ski center, this place is actually a large campground during the rest of the year. It seemed odd skiing among the campers buried in snow on our way to the main portions of the ski trails. Why is it that everyone seems to have their camera handy when someone falls? Parc de Campeur's narrow trails were truly beautiful, probably the prettiest we'd skied this season.
There goes Sandy, flying down the hill.
Go B.
And that's right behind her. Way cool. And now, Bill's gonna try it. A little scary here. Camera in hand. Sticking it here. Here we go.
Some of us took time to explore the downtown area before heading back to the lodge. Mont Tremblant is the name most people most associate with the Laurentians. The name is claimed by a mountain, a town, an alpine ski resort, and a provincial park. We chose to ski the municipal trail system, maintained in Domaine St. Bernard, but there is also 2 large cross-country trail systems in the park. This is a large trail system, mostly groomed for skate skiing as well as being tracked. There's plenty to see and do here and enough distance to make the fastest skate skier happy. We enjoyed the views along the river and crossed the new bridge that lets you ski right up to the base of the alpine area. There are even a few daunting hills that made for exhausting climbs and hair-raising descents. We also found a couple of ungroomed backcountry trails that were fun to do. After clearing snow from the lodge's parking lot the next morning, we headed back to Parc de Frêne for our final ski of the season. This time everything was nicely groomed, and we headed south to the Far Hills Inn entrance to the park in Valmarin. Here there is another fully equipped ski center and more trails that head farther south, and we had a nice time exploring several of them. On our ski back to the Val de Vide entrance, we managed to find a route that included a couple of challenging, ungroomed expert trails. What fun! Back to those 2 questions I asked up front. What drives us to participate in such an activity, and what would it take to make a perfect winter? As to the first question, I suppose there's no single thing that makes me want to ski. I certainly enjoy the scenery. Forests draped in snow are among nature's finest sights. Of course, for a guy who's mostly a couch potato, I have to say that the sport works for me physiologically, and I enjoy an adrenaline high much of the time I'm on skis. And I enjoy the adventure of skiing, traveling to new places, and exploring new trails. Then there's the technical challenge. I do get off on the fun stuff of having to ask myself, how in the world am I going to get past this sucker? Finally, there's the camaraderie of skiing with all my friends in this club. As to that quest for a perfect winter, I think I nearly found it this season. I had the best string of excellent skiing days in interesting places with fun people that I've ever experienced. And so, I want to thank all of you for helping to make a successful winter quest.